Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to my world of darkness and episode 17 of the Thicker Than Water recap, which today I am so happy to say we have completed our version, at least, of the Fall of London storyline. We tried to go with Fall of London, and I don't know, just the organization of the book and the fact that people were coming and going due to personal issues and stuff like that. It was very hard to run this game exactly how it was set up, but we ourselves we changed it. We made it so that it fit our game. And for those of you who have been paying attention, of course you understand that the game right now that we're running, Thicker Than Water, is actually set in modern times. It's 2021. And this story is set in 2012, and what we did was we introduced the blood of the characters from the Fall of London to my characters in Thicker Than Water to induce a memoriam so that the cult of Mithras could find out what happened to these 5 vampires and see if they could find any hints to help them along on the cult of Mithras's current goal. So that being said, the last time we left the coterie, they were all at Queen Anne's Elysium party at the Shard, where they had confronted her to let her know that Mithras seems to possibly still be alive and may very well want his throne back, which terrified her, and she did agree to give them not only the seal that she has in her possession that belong to Mithras, but also to get the other items that she possibly could persuade previous members of the cult of Mithras to give up in Mithras's name, under the stipulation that the coterie was able to kill her sire Valerius first. And that was actually a pretty interesting thing, because we ran with it. That was what the coterie decided to do, is that they would go ahead and work with her long enough to be able to get Mithras back into power. When they left and settled down for the night, however, deciding that they were going to try to locate Valerius the next game, or the next evening, they were moved in their sleep. Someone who had actually come, put them in body bags, and carried them off to another location. When they woke up the next evening in a storage unit, they heard the words Lancia Sanctum, and that is, yes, a callback to Requiem. I try to find ways to throw little things in there just to raise eyebrows every once in a while. And they had new memories flooding into their minds that their characters were placed in the cult of Mithras by an agent of the Inquisition, by a vampire who is actually working along with the SI, specifically the Society of Leopold, and was able to get them noticed by Mithras. These Kindred turned out, in the storyline that we're running from my game, to be almost like kamikaze agents. They were going to go in and be able to get close enough to Mithras. But the way that things ended up happening, due to the Blitz and Mithras going to torpor, they themselves also were torpid as Heralds of the Sun, so that they could get to him at his weakest. The member of the cult of Mithras who got them involved also contributed in them being lost and then rediscovered when the time was right. So they have been, at least in what I was running, sleeper agents, which actually ended up shaking the players emotionally, where we actually did have to stop and go, is this the right course of action? Because some of the players had actually become that attached to these kindred that they had built up, learning their memories and stuff, that the new memories that I had written in here actually was enough to really knock them off track on what they were thinking and how they were planning on going with their characters. And I let them know that even though they had been placed there, it doesn't mean that their feelings were any different. If their characters were truly dedicated to Mithras, if they had actually found redemption through the vampire god Mithras, that they could very well be double agents on this one. They could actually be working with Mithras against the Society of Leopold from the inside, and I allowed them to continue with whatever mentality they wanted to. The kindred that was waking them up, the member of the Society of Leopold, is Victor Loretta, the very same Pater Loretta who is performing this very ritual that our actual coterie is going through. He himself was a hunter before his embrace, and now he is working deep within the Society of Leopold to try to bring down the vampire menace from within. And he was going on and on, explaining that he himself was a key instrument in the Vienna project and things like that. So the kindred are actually being filled with all these things that they don't really know what to do. And the best part is, all of this information is going to be transferred to their other characters. When they wake up, they're going to remember what they can remember of these events. When Loretta tells them that the price that Lady Anne is asking for, that Queen Anne is asking for, is not out of the question, he produces for them a manila folder that has information such as where Valerius is, where he has been havening, and information on Valerius' background. This actually shook the characters quite a bit because they got to see exactly how old Valerius was, and the fact that they would have to fight a vampire of that advanced age. They were not sure exactly how things were going to go for them. Before being sent on their way, however, Victor has them all swallow what appeared to be a blood pearl or a bloodstone. But having Alice, she was able to understand that these things that they're swallowing, although thaumaturgical in nature, although blood sorcery in nature, they were not exactly what she would call a bloodstone, and she did not fully grasp what it was that they did. But being scrutinized by Victor Loretta, who is a terrifying figure as he is, they still all did swallow these blood pills as they were instructed. They do come up later. I put them in there for a reason. And it was actually kind of fun because a lot of the characters were trying to figure out ways to outsmart not swallowing the pills. I had one who was trying to use his medicine ability to shove it up into the little passage that leads up to the nose. And I was like, okay, well, you can do that, but you're going to sound very nasal. And as it is, as soon as it got into their throats, they dissolved it. They had actually come up with a good idea where they were going to have Dr. Henry slice them open to retrieve them, but they had dissolved and spread throughout their body before they had the chance to remove it. So at that point, they look at the address and find that they're only about a block away from this dilapidated old destroyed building that Valerius is using as a haven, which is where they decided to cook up their plan, which was the majority of the coterie was going to allow Alice to perform the ritual, donning the mask of shadows on them, basically giving them a heightened version of obfuscate. It creates almost like the effect that the Predator has when they're invisible, where it's just a shimmer. But Lady Catherine was not going to participate. In fact, she was going to go around to the front of the house, knock on the door, and talk to Valerius about how all of these things are happening, about the hunters, about Lady Anne's attempt to kill him. Basically tell him enough of the truth to have the other ones be able to sneak in behind and actually attack while they're talking. Unfortunately, things did not go exactly how they wanted it to do. They told Lady Catherine give them about 15 minutes before coming up and knocking on the door, when they were sneaking around back and looking for a way in and found someone else who was going into the door instead. But as he was on the back porch waiting, a woman answers the door. But just before he goes inside, he stops and looks back, and they all hear in their heads, including Lady Catherine out front, "What are you all doing here?" They freak out at this because not only is Dr. Henry and Alice able to tell by this person's aura that he's a very powerful, strong kindred, he's also cloaking. He's not giving up his full power. So they come up, and he seems to be able to see them past the Mask of Shadows, and they're able to have a full-on conversation without even speaking. The woman who answered the door for him, very confused on what exactly is going on. Lady Catherine, also hearing this, comes around and sees what's going on as her friends are ushered in the back door, and it shuts, and she goes around front. As they're coming in, she knocks on the door, and a male that has very strong similarities to the woman who answered the door. These are Valerius's ghouls, Jack and Diane. No, I did not name them. That is the name of the characters in the book. Jack and Diane are ghouls that have, I don't know if Valerius has just forgot to feed them on several occasions and the blood bond's just not holding as it should, but this individual who has caught the coterie as they're coming in, which is Mithras in his Monty Coven persona, he's been working with these ghouls, and basically tonight was the night he was going to go in for the kill on Valerius, because Valerius in the past had actually trapped him and was the cause for one of the reasons why Mithras went into torpor, because he tried to kill him by blowing him up. Jack and Diane would be attaining freedom after all this is over, and it was just tonight was an interesting night all the way around. When Jack comes downstairs and sees that there's a group of people, he panics, and when they go back upstairs, and when Jack goes back upstairs to tell Valerius, instead of introducing a guest as should have happened, he tells Valerius that it was a solicitor and that there's no one actually there. The coterie who has donned the Mask of Shadows and Lady Catherine at this point is they're heading upstairs, and Mithras as Monty Coven is just casually strolling up behind them. When the coterie enters the room that Valerius is sitting in, this entire building is just run down, destroyed. It's part of a group of buildings that should have been torn down, but this one for some reason was not, probably due to Valerius's influence keeping his haven. But this one floor, the walls have been knocked down, and it's been turned into one large room where everything looks like it's from like the 1940s. There's an old radio playing old jazz, and everything is just it feels like a professional man's office when they walk in, and Valerius is just sitting there writing. Lady Catherine walks in and makes herself known, and Valerius seems off. He seems distracted, and he lightly reprimands Jack for not letting him know that there's a lady present, and that he needs to have much more awareness, and he needs to work on how polite he is. He offers Lady Catherine a drink, who declines it, and the two of them walk over to a couch and discuss what Lady Catherine had come to discuss, which is such an interesting scene because she's she's the only one who's able to be seen. And the group of Kindred, the rest of the coterie, walk in and watch this whole thing unfold as Mithras just walks in and starts sniffing at blood that's in decanters and choosing which one he wants, because there are some that are not safe, which it's a good thing that that Lady Catherine's player decided that she was not going to drink anything, because what I had come up with is that over the last few months, Jack and Diane had been slowly poisoning Valerius with the help of Mithras through the blood that's in those decanters. And she could have very well, anybody who drank of that blood could have very well been affected by the kindred poison that was in there. Things got really, really strange, because as he pours himself a glass and finds a nice, comfortable armchair, Mithras just sits and watches as these kindred, who he knows who they are, those are his heralds. He watches them work. He lets them do what they're there to do. And as the conversation goes on, it just seems to be civil, but Valerius doesn't really seem to be allowing any of it to really penetrate the fog that he's in. Tommy, our young Nosferatu, leaps at him under the mask of shadows and goes to stake him with a good 4 foot long stake. He's got a hand on one end, his palm resting on the other, and he's using all of his potence. And we've seen how strong Tommy is. But as the wood connects, the flesh of marble that Valerius has, because I've described his waxy texture, and that the sound that he makes when he moves, the joints rubbing together, is like stone that is grinding up against itself. The stake just shatters into a million pieces, and before anybody can see what's happening, Valerius is on his feet with his hand just roughly around Tommy's neck, and he's squeezing, with blood coming out of Tommy's ears and eyes and nose, and he's struggling. And that's when everything breaks loose. Like all the kindred attack at that point in time. Alice is off in the corner, and she's using Extinguished Vitae from a distance. And Dr. Henry Banerjee, who also has access to this power, is also using Extinguished Vitae. And Tony, our young Bruja, runs up behind him and wraps himself around and starts trying to pull him off. But the Elder Venture's just not going anywhere. This fight was probably one of the most cinematic and amazingly dramatic things, because we saw how much damage cannot happen when there's a major battle. At one point in time, Henry's player was sitting there talking about how he's looking around on the ground for weapons from the broken furniture, and I told him that nothing's broken. This Ventru has literally stood still the entire time, ignoring every blow that's given to him as his hunger increases higher and higher and higher. I do have to say that sadly, Tony died. Our young Nosferatu died as Valerius squeezed all of the health from him in 2 rounds. In 2 rounds, Tony's head was effectively separated from his body. And as he fell to the ground in ashes, all of his arteries opened and his blood, very similar to Theft of Vitae, the description of Theft of Vitae, all of his blood wrenched from his body and flew out the window. This was the effect of those pills that the characters swallowed. I was trying to figure out exactly how I was going to make it so that Loretta got their blood if he didn't know where they were, if he didn't know what happened to them. I had no idea exactly how I was going to pull that off, but then I figured, Why not like Theft of Vitae in a pill form? Why not? We're playing a game with vampires and werewolves. Let's just make up some stuff on the fly. And it was something that I had decided to do for the story, and it worked out so very well. And when this battle was raging and they just kept using Extinguished Vitae on this elder, and he couldn't find them, and he was just swiping back and forth and trying to find everything, as Tommy and Lady Catherine decided that it was time to go, and Mithras just sat there in a chair, amused at the entire thing. And our two magic dealers, this Dr. Henry and Alice, continued to attack with everything that they had. And finally, Valerius, in a blind rage, after having acidic vitae sprayed in his eyes with Scorpion's touch, he ran and effectively just slammed into a wall as Alice spread her corrosive vitae on the floor. And the rotting wood sizzled as he stood there trying to gain his bearings, not knowing who was attacking him, understanding that he was surrounded on all sides, but the floor collapsed underneath him. And as the Kindred looked down the hole into the room below, and they found the elder vampire staked, and realized they had won this fight, Mithras got up, lightly applauded them, as if it was a sporting event, wandered downstairs, and using acidic blood on his hands, touching Valerius's neck, removed his head from his shoulders, placed it in an old bowling bag that they had found in the building, handed it to them, and said, "You'll need this as proof." And when they stopped and tried to ask Mithras questions, he just looked in their eyes and said, "Retrieve my belongings." And they realized that it was time to go at that point. They packed up what they had and they left, not even having a chance to fully mourn the loss of the Nosferatu neonate Tommy, who had given his life in the attack on Valerius. When they arrived at Queen Anne's establishment back at the Shard, she was alone this time. No Justicar sitting in the room with them or anything like that. But when the coterie walked in and placed the bag on a table and opened it and showed her the prize, the head that wouldn't dust as it should have, especially with how old Valerius was, they realized that it was the still living head of Valerius. That Mithras had removed the head of Valerius without killing him. And they presented the prize to Queen Anne. She placed the seal on the table next to the bag. And she called for Scarlet, her PA, to send in the others. And Sri Sansa, the Tremere who is in possession of the silver ring with the inset ruby that belonged to Mithras, walks in. And so does Richard de Ward, the Nosferatu, who has the bronze dagger of Egyptian style that belonged to Mithras. They realized that they were still missing the Frisian cap. They had the seal, they had the dagger, they had the cup, they had the ring, but they still didn't have that Frisian cap. And that's when Queen Anne revealed to them that Gwenllian wasn't missing, as the rumors were going, that she believed that Gwenllian was actually the victim of a Sabbat pack that had been marauding throughout London. They hadn't been able to catch them. They've been so hidden. But this one Sabbat pack had been terrorizing, and she said that, strangely enough, tonight she was able to find out exactly where they were, and that she's willing to tell them where they are. And if they are going to find this Frisian cap, that is where it would be. So the coterie leaves. Of course, it's just one fetch mission after another with everything that's going on. They get down to an old railroad loading station. And there's part of the station, or part of the yard, the rail yard, that isn't in use anymore. That it's just effectively a graveyard of warehouses and old train cars that are just allowing themselves to be taken by time. But when they get there, it's very easy to see this one warehouse, this one busted up warehouse, which is the home of this pack. And it's not hard to see that the Frisian cap is right there. But sitting in almost like a makeshift throne, they see Mithras. They see Mithras in the same form that Monty Coven form, sitting before his horde of Sabbat. They notice that, like, there's a whole bunch of makeshift decorations that seem to be almost Mithric cult inspired, like almost like garbage sculpture of bulls and suns. When Mithras, or Monty, notices that the coterie is there, he stands and he looks around and he looks at them and smiles and says, well, I guess I won't be needing these foot soldiers any longer. And he uses the power of visceral absorption, that protean blood sorcery power that's in the Sabbat Guide that causes dead organic material, all the blood and viscera of bodies to swirl around him in a cyclone and come into him. But it's stronger and it works on Kindred. I made Mithras terrifying. I wanted him to be a monster. And I wanted to get the Kindred to really try to decide whose side are they on. Are they trying to preserve Queen Anne's reign? Are they going to help this godlike monster vampire reclaim his power? Are they going to help the Society of Leopold and the Second Inquisition? They chose Mithras. But that was where Mithras's next thing was going to be. As Mithras stood and walks over to a overturned spool and places the Frisian cap down, and one by one the items get placed down for Mithras, he reveals to them that the next thing is to join him in the holy communion of vampire essence. Mithras is planning on diablerizing the coterie, using these items and their souls to strengthen himself during the ritual of transferring the soul. Now, there is nothing in the book about that being needed. But again, I was trying to create Mithras as this larger-than-life antagonist and see exactly who the players were going to end up supporting. And as they each put down their items and submitted to the fact that this was going to happen, I at that point stated that they heard screaming and yelling and gunfire. Then I had them wake up. The last thoughts and memories they had inside of the bodies from the fall of London was the feeling of their arteries all opening and having the blood ripped from them, stopping Mithras from being able to perform the ritual, and also being attacked by someone. Was it the Second Inquisition? Was it the Camarilla? Was it another party? Was it the Sabbat fighting back? I didn't really give explanation for that. I gave the characters enough to have suspicions about Victor Loretta in the current Thicker Than Water game. I gave them the ability to also wonder if Mithras was still alive. I didn't want them to have those answers. They themselves were being put through this ritual by the cult of Mithras, by a traitor of the cult of Mithras, if that's even true. How much of what Victor Loretta told them was true? Is that really happening? Is Victor Loretta truly a vampire agent of the Second Inquisition? They woke up, still on the night of Halloween during the ritual. they had only closed their eyes for seconds when all of these memories were flushed in them. And I understand that's not exactly how Memoriam works, but Memoriam works on your own memories as it is. You're not supposed to be able to delve through other people's. But now those characters have those memories. And for those of you who have been patiently waiting, and if you are curious at all, I will just let you know that Tommy, or Sam, is Alice. Tommy drew Alice as a name because I did it all randomly. Damien, or Axel, god damn, I'm never going to get that right. Too many people with double names. Axel is Dr. Henry Banerjee. Tinia was Tony Castielli. Tommy was our new Gabriel, the city gangrel who got roped into this ritual, since we don't have Deacon any longer because he was taken by the Beckoning. And the veiled participant, who was Lady Catherine, was Dawn Rose. She was brought back to Portland by Vasantasina to help her coterie, because they needed a seer to help them with these things, to help them to shift through the memories of what was going to happen. The initial questioning of what did you see, what happened, that all happened. The orgy of the night still happened. Victor Loretta excused himself, and our kindred were left to soak in the events of the party. And when I say that, the kindred actually ran back to their stone sarcophagi that they were sitting in during the ritual, and went and started to drink up as much of the blood as they could that belonged to the kindred who they had just spent all that time in, with all those memories still mingling. And that is where we ended the game. That is where I called post. And I understand that was confusing. We ended it in a way that made ourselves happy with everything. We changed things for our liking. And it also tied things into the Thicker Than Water storyline. When I first created Loretta, he was an ex-hunter turned venture. The storyline really didn't change there, but when I wanted to bring him into Thicker Than Water, I really didn't know how to do it, and something told me Cult of Mithras. How much fun would that be? And then after playing with him like that for just a little while, I stopped and I thought, and I was like, it is against the character to have him be completely loyal to Mithras as a god. He was part of the Society of Leopold before his embrace, and I don't see him changing. And I like the idea of the fact that the characters are now stuck wondering, what of those memories can they trust? Is this vampire elder who just put them through this ritual a member of the Second Inquisition itself? Is he one of the reasons why the hunters are attacking the city so much? Was he one of the controlling forces of Project Cert in Sticks and Bones? Like, how much of this is carrying over as repercussions from the other plot lines that we've been in through so far? And is Victor Loretta truly one of the big bads of this game? They did find out that Victor has ties with Lucindy of Clan Ventru, the Justicar for life, which is also bringing the Anarch conspiracy theorist to mind of, are the Camarilla involved with the Second Inquisition? Is this a ploy to get rid of the Anarch community? There's so much to go on, and I really can't wait to see what happens. We're going to be playing tomorrow night. Today is Thursday. We're going to be playing tomorrow. Unfortunately, Serendipity Weird is going to be out of town again. And oh yeah, when she was out of town for the first couple of game sessions, while we were doing Fall of London, I played Lady Catherine, and I had so much fun with that character. But with that, I do have a reason on why her character is not going to be available, but her character is still there. She's not running off again. But unfortunately, Dawn Rose will not be present in most of the game session for next or for tomorrow night. So that is where we leave. That's where we leave off on this recap, and I'm really excited to see where things go, because now we're back in Portland. We don't have to worry about this Fall of London stuff anymore. Again, if anybody is interested in me doing like a full Fall of London review or anything like that, I do need to know, because I'm not going to do it unless it's asked for. Just because there is so much ins and outs, and I do see a lot of great potential in that book, but it is one of those things where I just kind of want to... I wish I had a program to have it on my computer so I could take completely apart and rearrange it. But I am Voivode Maquette. This is my World of Darkness, and this has been a very interesting rendition of the Fall of London, I'm sure. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. Good evening.